making those less than thrilling tasks a little more palatable by linking them to something enjoyable. Hollins even suggests making a list. Temptations in one column, obligatory tasks in the other, and then brainstorm ways to combine them.
That's such a clever idea. I'm going to try that. But sometimes, even the promise of a reward isn't enough. Sometimes we get overwhelmed.
Welcome to Witter. Who Has Time to Read? The podcast that brings deep dives for busy minds. Listen to AI hosts Jane and Dane and get ready to unpack the world's most captivating books in just a fraction of the time. Whether commuting, working out, or just squeezing in a quick break, we deliver key insights, thought-provoking themes, and takeaways you can carry into your day. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Plus, use our links in the description to purchase this book. Your support helps us bring more engaging book discussions to you. Listen and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Who has time to read? You do, with Witter.
Okay, so you know how we all have those projects, those to-dos that just seem to linger forever?
Oh, absolutely. Those things that haunt the back of your mind.
Right. Like that screenplay you started or that website redesign that's been on hold for months.
Yeah, or even just that half-put-together bookshelf gathering dust.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today with Peter Hollins' book, Finish What You Start. It's all about turning those intentions into, well, realities.
You know what I find interesting? Most people think productivity is all about lists and deadlines, that sort of thing.
Yeah, just power through it, right?
Right, but Hollins, he goes deeper. He's saying we need to understand why we start things, but don't finish them. It's like he's giving us the cheat codes to our own brains, figuring out those psychological roadblocks.
I love the cheat codes for productivity. Speaking of which, Hollins uses a pretty cool analogy to explain his whole following through concept.
Oh, right. What was it? He
compares it to giant robots in anime.
Oh, yes. Those massive robots formed by the smaller ones, like Voltron or Power Rangers.
Yeah.
Each with its own, special function.
Exactly. And Hollins says following through is similar. It's this fusion of different elements. Focus, self-discipline, action, and persistence. Each one is essential for, actually getting things done.
So it's like each element is crucial for the giant robot to function properly, right?
Exactly. Without one, the whole system kind of falls apart. So let's break it down. What about focus? What's its role in all of this?
Well, focus is like the head of the robot. It's what directs your energy toward your goals, keeps your eye on the prize, so to speak.
It's like choosing your destination and sticking to the route, no matter how tempting those detours might seem.
Exactly. No more meandering down side roads when you should be on the highway to project done.
Okay, so if focus is the head, what about self-discipline? Where does that fit into our productivity robot?
Self-discipline, well, that's the backbone. It's the structure and support that keeps you upright, keeps you moving, even when those distractions come knocking.
Especially when it's so easy to get sidetracked, right? Like that allure of social media or, anything but the task at hand.
Oh, absolutely. Self-discipline is what helps you resist those temptations. Mm-hmm. It's the difference between planning a workout and actually dragging yourself to the gym.
I feel that. Okay, so we've got focus as the head, self-discipline as the backbone, then action would be like the hands and feet of the operation.
Exactly. Action is where we move beyond just thinking about doing something and we actually, do it. We've got the goal in sight. We're mentally prepared thanks to focus and self-discipline. And now it's time to roll up our sleeves and get to work.
Because a plan without action is, it's just a daydream, isn't it? Okay, so we've got the head, the spine, the hands and feet of our productivity robot. What's the final element? What's the heart of it all?
The heart. I'd say that's persistence. That unwavering drive that keeps you pushing towards the finish line.
Even when you face setbacks, when you want to give up.
Exactly. Persistence is the fuel that keeps the entire system running. It's what separates those who dream from those who achieve.
So it's like this chain reaction we've got going on here. Focus fuels self-discipline, which empowers action, and then persistence keeps everything moving forward. I'm starting to see how all these elements work together. But let's get real for a second. We all know it's not always that easy to just do it, right? What are some of the reasons we struggle to finish what we start?
Well, Hollins digs into that, and he identifies these things he calls inhibiting tactics and psychological roadblocks, those things that often hold us back.
Okay, spill the tea. What are these sneaky tactics and roadblocks?
Well, one major culprit is setting vague or unrealistic goals.
Yeah, like trying to build a house without a blueprint.
Exactly. Or trying to navigate with a blurry map. You're bound to get lost. Same goes for our goals. If they're not clear and achievable, it's much harder to follow through. It's like starting that website redesign without a clear vision, or a plan, and then halfway through you're like, what have I gotten myself into?
Been there. And of course, we can't forget about the P word, procrastination. We all do it, but it can really sabotage our best efforts.
Oh, absolutely. And, procrastination often stems from these deeper issues, these psychological roadblocks we were talking about.
Right. Like, what are some of those? What's going on beneath the surface?
Well, sometimes it's just plain old laziness, to be honest. It's that lack of discipline to do what needs to be done, even when we know it's good for us.
We've all been there, but other times it's more than that, right?
Right. Other times it's fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment holding us back.
Oh, yeah. That feeling of, what if I try my best and it's still not good enough? It can be paralyzing.
Exactly. And then, on the flip side, there's perfectionism. Striving for excellence is great, but sometimes that need for everything to be perfect, well, it can prevent us from ever actually finishing anything.
It's like that saying, done is better than perfect, right? So how do we break free from these mental barriers? Where do we even start?
Well, a big part of it is self-awareness. If we don't understand our own strengths, weaknesses, how we work best, it's hard to set ourselves up for success.
It's like trying to put together that bookshelf without reading the instructions, You might eventually figure it out, but it's going to be a lot more frustrating.
Exactly. We need to understand ourselves, our work styles, our tendencies, to figure out how we can work smarter, not just harder.
So true. But knowing ourselves is only part of the equation, right? What else comes into play when it comes to, actual getting things done?
Right. We also need to understand what motivates us. Hollins talks about two types of motivation, external and internal.
Okay, so external motivation, that's like the classic carrot and stick approach, right? Deadlines, rewards, maybe the fear of letting someone down.
Exactly. Think about it like having a workout buddy. Someone to hold you accountable, keep you going, even when you'd rather hit the snooze button.
Makes sense. But you're saying there's an even more powerful type of motivation, this internal kind.
Right. Hollins argues that while external motivators can be effective, it's the internal ones that are more powerful, more sustainable in the long run.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So what are some examples of those internal motivators, and how do we tap into them?
It's about connecting with your deeper values and aspirations. Ask yourself, what makes you feel truly fulfilled? What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?
Wow, those are some deep questions.
They are, but they can be incredibly powerful motivators. Thinking about your impact on the world, your purpose, that tends to light a fire into you more than, say, just meeting a deadline.
That's for sure. But even with the best intentions and a fire in our bellies, procrastination can still be a struggle. How do we deal with that? What are some practical strategies?
One strategy that Hollins talks about is temptation bundling.
Temptation bundling. Okay, that sounds intriguing. Tell me more.
So you pair something you need to do with something you want to do. It's like strategically bribing yourself to be productive.
I love that. So I only let myself watch my favorite show while I'm folding laundry, or listen to that new audiobook while I'm cleaning the bathroom.
Exactly. You're making those less than thrilling tasks a little more palatable by linking them to something enjoyable. Hollins even suggests making a list. Temptations in one column, obligatory tasks in the other, and then brainstorm ways to combine them.
That's such a clever idea. I'm going to try that. But sometimes, even the promise of a reward isn't enough. Sometimes we get overwhelmed by the sheer size of a task.
Oh, absolutely. That feeling of where do I even begin can be paralyzing.
Exactly. And that's when procrastination creeps in.
Right. And Hollins addresses that too. He says that instead of trying to climb Mount Everest in a single bound, start with a gentle hike in the foothills.
Break it down, make it manageable.
Exactly. Break down those overwhelming tasks into smaller, more manageable steps.
I love that. It's amazing how much less daunting things seem when you take that first step. But what about when you need a little extra push to get started?
For that, Hollins suggests a little productive paranoia.
Productive paranoia. Okay, now that sounds kind of intense.
It's about channeling fear in a constructive way. Ask yourself, what could go wrong if I delay this task? Let those potential consequences motivate you.
So it's like a mental fire alarm, a little jolt to snap you out of complacency.
Exactly. But don't worry, it's not about living in a constant state of anxiety. It's about using that fear strategically to overcome procrastination.
I like it. So we've talked about the internal battles of motivation and procrastination, but what about the external factors that affect our productivity?
Oh, right. Our environment plays a huge role.
Exactly. Like creating that no distraction zone we mentioned earlier. I am ready to transform my workspace into a productivity sanctuary. What are the key elements?
It really is about minimizing distractions, right? Think of it like trying to meditate in the middle of a rock concert.
Ooh, yeah, not exactly a recipe for inner peace.
Exactly. Our minds are constantly being pulled in different directions, especially in our hyper-connected world. It's no wonder we struggle to focus.
So true. If my desk is cluttered, phones buzzing, notifications popping up left and right, forget it. I can't get anything done.
Right. It's about creating that space where you can actually think, where you can focus without being bombarded by all those external cues.
I hear you. But even when I manage to escape those distractions, I swear sometimes my mind just drifts back to them anyway.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. That's actually something Hollins talks about, this idea of attention residue.
Attention residue, what's that?
It's like even after we switch tasks, part of our mind is still stuck on that previous activity. It's like that feeling you get after you finish a really intense movie.
Yeah, you're physically present, but mentally you're still kind of in the story.
Exactly. And that attention residue, it can really take a toll on our productivity. We're not fully present, not giving our all to the task at hand.
So how do we combat that?
Hollins talks about single tasking, really dedicating your full attention to one task at a time.
Single tasking, huh? In our world of constant multitasking, that feels almost revolutionary.
It does, doesn't it? But it's about quality over quantity. You're minimizing that residue, maximizing your focus on each individual task.
Right. So instead of juggling a million things at once, we should try tackling them one at a time.
Exactly. And Hollins recommends batching similar tasks together. So instead of constantly switching between, say, emails, phone calls, and working on a presentation, group those activities and tackle them in focused blocks.
So it's like creating an assembly line for your to-do list. I like it. Okay, but even with the best systems and a distraction-free zone, there are always those pesky tasks that, I don't know, they seem important, but they're really just energy vampires.
Oh, absolutely. Those sneaky energy drainers. And that's where the don't-do list comes in.
A don't-do list. I've never even thought about that.
It's easy to focus on what we need to do, but it's equally important to identify those things that are holding us back, the things that drain our time and energy without really contributing to our goals.
So what kind of things go on a don't-do list? Give me some examples.
Think about those meetings that could have been emails, We're getting bogged down in unnecessary details that don't actually move the project forward. It's about being mindful of how you're spending your time and energy.
It's like decluttering your schedule instead of just your desk. I'm all for that. But what about those times when we overthink things? We have the best intentions, we've got our plan, and then we get stuck in analysis paralysis.
Oh, I've been there. That's where the 40-70 rule can be super helpful.
The 40-70 rule. Fill me in.
Hollins borrows this from Colin Powell, who said that when you're making a decision, you should aim to have between 40% and 70% of the information you need before taking action.
Okay, so not too little information, but not too much either?
Exactly. Any less. And you're flying blind, right? But any more, and you risk getting bogged down in the details, maybe missing opportunities.
It's about finding that sweet spot. Being informed, but not letting information overload paralyze you.
Right. Trust your gut. Be willing to take calculated risks, even if you don't have all the answers. Sometimes good enough is better than perfect, especially when it comes to making progress.
I like that. So we've talked about focus, action, persistence. But here's a curveball. Hollins also advocates for the power of doing nothing.
It seems counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
But our minds, much like our bodies, need time to rest and recharge.
So give ourselves permission to take breaks.
Exactly. Time to disconnect, to daydream, to just let our minds wander. It's not only good for our well-being, but it can actually boost our creativity too.
It's like they say, a rested mind is a creative mind, right? So it's all about finding that balance between focused action and intentional rest. Makes sense. But let's be real, even when we have all the best strategies in place, there are always those potential pitfalls. What are some common ones we should be aware of?
Well, one big one is false hope syndrome, setting unrealistic expectations for ourselves.
Oh, yeah, like thinking we're going to magically transform our lives overnight.
Exactly. We set the bar impossibly high and then get discouraged when we don't clear it on the first try.
It's like expecting to run a marathon with zero training.
Exactly. It's a recipe for burnout. We need to be kind to ourselves, celebrate our progress, focus on building sustainable habits rather than chasing those quick fixes.
So true. It's a marathon, not a sprint. What else? What other pitfalls should we watch out for?
Hollins also talks about the dangers of overthinking, of worrying too much. It can keep us stuck in that cycle of inaction.
So it's not just about having a plan. It's about trusting the plan and taking action, even if it's imperfect action.
Exactly. And finally, never underestimate the importance of self-awareness. What works for one person might not work for another. We need to figure out what works for us, create systems that support our unique needs and preferences.
We need to personalize our approach to productivity, find what helps us thrive. This has been such an insightful conversation, so much practical wisdom on how to actually finish what we start. If you had to leave our listeners with just one key takeaway, what would it be?
If I had to pick just one, it would be this. Start small, be consistent, and celebrate your progress. Don't get overwhelmed by the big picture. Focus on those small, achievable steps each day. Build those positive habits. And acknowledge your accomplishments along the way.
I love that. Start small, be consistent, celebrate those wins. Such great advice. And remember, you don't have to do everything at once. Choose one strategy that resonates with you, try it out, and see what happens.
Experiment. Find what works for you and create those systems that help you thrive. And hey, you never know. You might just inspire others with your own finish what you start success story.
And that's a goal worth striving for. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Finish What You Start. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and are feeling energized and ready to tackle those projects you've been putting off.
It's been a pleasure. And remember, the journey of 1,000 finished projects begins with a single step.
So get out there, take that step, and finish what you start.
Thanks for listening to Witter, Who Has Time to Read, produced by One Media. Please support the author by purchasing the book or audiobook using the link in the description. It's a great way to help keep the art of writing alive. And stay in the loop. Subscribe to our newsletter for updates on weekly deep dives. And don't forget to share your thoughts or suggest our next deep dive at witterpodcast@gmail.com.